Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunworks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear.
All right, Jim, we're back for another podcast, Long Range Pursuit. Me and you talking about products. Boy, this is starting to sound familiar.
We're doing this a lot now.
Well, I guess the purpose for this podcast obviously is to inform listeners about products, product decisions. New product development's a really big part of our company. We invest a significant amount of our resources into improving products and creating new products. And I've had some reflections on this lately. Wouldn't it be nice if we just picked somebody else's product and just copied that, and that was like how we did stuff? Wouldn't it be fast?
It would be faster,
right? To change
easier.
something and to do something different, even if it's in the similar space, to start from scratch and first principles, it's like it just costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then somebody can just come along and copy something. How long did we work on that bipod? 2.5 years?
At least, yeah.
2.5 years, and we have that company that shows up out of the blue. They just basically took one of those, shipped it to China, said put a Picatinny attachment on it, make it 15% bigger, copy the legs, copy the functions, copy the display, copy everything, and send it back. And they literally do it. And now they've got a product that's, 30% less on the market?
Right.
And I bet that company doesn't own, employ, or pay one engineer or one license of Onshape or any of that overhead.
Yeah.
Or even the testing. Like, think of all the testing that we've done.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty frustrating. So here we are talking about new product. And we want to talk about the Nexus Gen 2 today. Yeah. Why don't you give the listeners a rundown on what the Gen 2 part means?
Okay. Yeah. So on the Nexus, we launched the original Nexus, and we learned a ton during that process of that launch.
Don't do new actions. I think, is that what we learned?
that was
unless you're a sadomasochist.
Yeah, we learned a lot about that. But it's like bringing that thing up. We went through so many steps. I mean, and we brought a lot of different features. And the action was aluminum action, barrel extension. There was a ton of new learnings built around that. We incorporated a 3-position safety into the shroud. So again, something that has a lot of learning and a lot of...
You weren't here when we started that.
I was not.
You were on your sabbatical.
I was.
For a couple years there.
Yeah.
Jim's been here for 13?
14
years
minus
a
2.
2-year sabbatical.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to do is start over the clock so he can get another 5-year award celebration.
Yeah, because then you have to go to 10 years after that. And so it's, there's a 2 and a 5, so it makes more sense.
So when we started that, I mean, I know you're a Winchester Model 70 nut.
Oh, yeah.
Right? 3-position safety all day long.
100%.
So when we started that, I actually didn't want to do that 3-position safety. And, there's nothing wrong with a 2-position safety, but the feature that I was looking for was a bolt lock. But there's this other feature that exists in the industry that is very interesting to me, and that is can you guess it? Decocker.
Decocker, yeah.
Because a decocker lets you carry one in the chamber and be completely safe.
Right.
And so a lot of the Europeans have picked up on this, and I don't know where it first started showing up, but it's like the first really popular gun was in the Blaser.
Right.
And then we've seen a lot of the other models kind of pick that function up because it just makes a lot of sense. It really is safe.
Yeah.
So that's where we started. But, that project was already so complex. In my infantile, experience, I thought, oh, geez, well, there's tons of 3-position safeties. We're not going to be able to get this decocker done. We'll do it later. Let's just do a simple, easy 3-position safety right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the difficulty when you get into the 3-position safety is that you're actually cocking the firing pin back even further rather than decocking it because you're releasing the pressure off of the sear of the trigger. And that does, in theory, I suppose, create a safer state than just blocking the trigger mechanism, which is the way the Remingtons are done. But, going through that, figuring out how to do that, and then timing all the parts and working with these tolerance stacks to get all these parts to line up where the sear can be disengaged by this camming action that's done in a handful of different ways it's a pretty difficult problem, and it's a very difficult manufacturing problem to make all those parts to interact correctly and allow that safety to do its job and not put the gun in an actually less safe state, which you certainly don't want that. So there's a lot of understanding and complexity that goes into that.
Yeah, and the truth is, we had some wear issues with that pin on the lock, and a couple other changes. It's like we changed to a steel bolt shroud right in the middle of that, kind of updated everybody's stuff, and it was working really good. But I just didn't like the window when you adjust the trigger and you get everything fit perfectly. The window from safe to not safe was so small.
Yeah.
It really, really bothered me to have something that was that sensitive in a gun.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean they weren't safe. It just means, a lot of users like to tinker with their stuff. A user takes that trigger and starts adjusting its position forward, back. Like, that's changing that relationship with the cocking piece and the safety mechanism. Yeah. Which can affect the way the whole product functions and the safety that's there. So we have that nice little band of tape across this that don't break this seal. Yeah. Don't mess with this thing.
We put a marker in there, put the tape on. It's like, if you have one of those, don't mess with it. It's set up. It's perfect the way that it works. But it is difficult. And I think one of the other, just the user experiences of that safety is people are typically used to a Remington style safety where actuating that safety is very easy, and what they don't understand is when you're cocking back the firing pin spring to put that safety on a 3-position safety, you're pulling that spring back, and so there's a lot of force required to do that. And people, Model 70 guys like myself understand that safety is a little harder to actuate, and so there's a lot of user experience, I think, there that people didn't understand the mechanism behind why that safety lever is a little harder to actuate, and so they didn't like that.
Well, that was one of the biggest things that we addressed there. Why don't you keep going on your list of differences?
Let's see. We were talking all the things that came into the Nexus when we launched it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bedding.
Yeah, we have these different bedding surfaces. We've worked pretty hard to come up with some unique ways to make a gun shoot better based on the bedding without having to, full length bed everything. And we had to make some adjustments here. The Nexus, the other thing about that NXT action is that it's a switch barrel. And so we've got the bolts on the recoil lug for clamping and unclamping the barrel and doing that switch action.
You basically have 2 recoil lugs underneath that receiver in the front, and you've got 3 what are they, 1032s?
I believe so.
Quarter 20s. 1032s.
Yeah, I think they're 1032. Yeah. So those are interacting in that space where we're bedding, and they added some complexity or some problems to solve in that bedding surface.
We've been doing this wedge system since way back in the beginning, where you drop it in the aluminum chassis and you've got this wedge that sandwiches the recoil lug back against the block. And we're starting to see everybody else pick up on this is the secret sauce to making an aluminum block work.
Yeah.
But we've been doing it forever.
And some of them are the first guys that have ever done it too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually an old patent. Shoot, who did that originally a long time ago? And I think the guys over at Savage invented it, and they didn't realize, but there was a patent that was there, and so Savage actually had to walk away from that.
Okay.
I don't think it was because it didn't work. I think it's because there was still some time left on that patent.
Some prior art.
So, and Savage did such a great job of advertising it, kind of got him in trouble. But no, it's really interesting to start trolling around some patents. It's like everything you think's an innovation. Like Tom Manners and his Hinge trying to bully everybody into not doing a folding stock. It's like you go back, HS Precision patented that almost 30 years ago for, I think there was a project they were doing for the Israeli military, and they built that. It's like, there it is right there. It's like every time you think you've invented something new and it's special, it's like you just go start search on patents, and you got to be creative to find all of it. But it's like, it's all there.
Yeah.
Like everybody's had that idea before.
Yeah. So anyway, those were a lot. There was a lot around the switch barrel that we were doing with a.
Yeah, we did it wrong about 4 times before we got it right.
Yeah, we did that. We went through a lot of learning to get that clamping mechanism correct in that interaction. And when we did get it right, it was interesting to see, there's more to it than just that joint there, but the accuracy of the Nexus, our guys that shoot all our guns, when we had that stuff right, they loved seeing a Nexus come through because they shot very well. And so, it was great once we'd gone through that process of learning there. So those were some of the changes there. And then the stock itself, we added a lot of, there's a lot of functionality built into it. We've got a full length ARCA rail, and we were just discussing this last week with some of our sales team and our engineering team of having that ability to adjust a bipod. We've got that full length ARCA rail, and in my mind that was always like, if you're going to shoot off of a tripod, you want that, and otherwise you don't use it. But it definitely has some.
Well, I told you I want all of our forends super short so I can reach the damn bipod from a shooting position.
Yeah.
Doing that ARCA rail and letting you place the bipod at any position lets you kind of fit it.
Yeah, so an ARCA mount on a bipod allows you to quickly adjust the position of your bipod and allow you to shoot well. So that's
if you're running an ARCA mount on the bipod,
right?
Now we have our ARCA rails full length ARCA with a little stub of Picatinny out the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's some nice functionality there. The detachable magazine, that's something that I've always appreciated and liked a lot. But we incorporated a double stack, double feed detachable magazine into that gun. So
we know why everybody does single feed. Like we know why everybody runs a Remington style 700 clone.
Yeah.
And an AICS single feed, right? We know why all those decisions were made.
Yeah. A lot of pain around getting that to feed well and function right. The mags to come out and, be able to come in and out very easily. But honestly, some great functionality, again, once we worked through all those bugs and all those pain points. And then
I felt like the action and the barrel extension, the extraction system, I felt like all that was pretty, those were new for us, right? It's a full diameter bolt.
Mm-hmm.
And the way everything works there's a lot of learnings you have to go through to understand how the different pieces work. If you're just copying another product where it's like this dimension equals this dimension equals that, you can put together a system that works pretty easy. But as soon as it's like, okay, well, that's a great idea, and that's a great idea, and that's a great idea, it's like, let's combine those and make a product, innovate our own couple things like we did on the extraction. And it's like, okay, well, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
Right? And then you have to go through all of those iterations to get the optimum performance.
Yeah. And it's easy to look at all those unique features and say, I want that functionality and that one and that one. And then when you put them all together, seeing the interaction between them, it's not always intuitive about what's going on with some of those interactions.
A really good example is looking back, I really would like to have a bigger diameter firing pin going through, shroud, cocking piece, etc. There's a couple reasons why. But we have this shroud retention mechanism with the bolt handle, right? So it slips into that dovetail, locks everything in. We've seen that before. It works pretty good. But as soon as you start adding up your dimensions, there wasn't room to make it bigger.
Yeah.
Right? And that cascades into other decisions and things that we have to do. Like it's very interesting to start from scratch like that and to try to bring something up. I think we were a year over budget on that, and we were probably into it 2 years to start. I think that was probably a 3-year engineering project. I would guess somewhere around 6,000-7,000 hours.
Yeah, I think that's easily the case.
Yeah. Would have been a lot cheaper just to buy a Macmillan and a Defiance and a Proof and just make another gun, right?
Right. Yeah.
Stock-wise, so you and I have worked together for a long time on stocks, right? We developed the first process together, actually developed the Climber and Magnus together, and kind of outlined the verdict and decided this is what our stock families look like. And I always felt like you really, really vibed on that. You didn't participate in the Nexus stock development.
Yeah.
So coming back in from outside, how do you feel like we did in terms of bringing along those original design principles and design geometries? And then what do you think about the couple changes and modifications that make the Nexus unique?
Yeah, I mean, so bringing in the negative comb and features like that to help mitigate recoil and get back on the gun, those carried over and work really well. The length of the forend was something we talked about a lot, and I feel like the Nexus kind of ended up longer than what we had been developing. But it's got that full length rail, which again, we've got some. Now, if you can run that different head, you've got the ability to make those adjustments you need. We did a lot of work looking at the grip and making those geometries work right. And looking, between the Climber and the Magnus, there's a little bit of difference there in the grip. But I think one thing that on those original designs we did that I would have changed was shortening the distance between the grip and the trigger. And that's something that got incorporated into the Nexus stock that is a great feature. That grip shape is brought forward a little more and allows you to get into the trigger a little better. And so I do appreciate those features that came forward. The grip itself got a little...
We originally intended for that trigger to be adjustable in position.
Right.
And when we started that, we even had a prototype, right, trigger, because we were sourcing a trigger. And so we had that prototype, but we never, ever could get that launched with those guys. Yeah. And so we kind of ended up with this dead feature that was pretty frustrating. I'm just setting you up for some information later.
Yeah, for sure.
But what did you think of the thumb shelf? So we changed that on the Climber and Magnus. Like, we started this concept of this thumb shelf, this flat that runs all the way up and down. And so the idea was, if the user puts his thumb on that and then slides his hand forward or back until the finger, right, and the grip is right for his hand size. So it's super adjustable. Like, the Climber is a really, really like one size fits all type grip. It's very, very cool that way.
Yeah.
What do you think about the change in the Nexus?
Yeah, there's a lot about that grip that I like. It's a lot. The grip feels a lot beefier. It's wider and thicker than especially the Climber, but the Magnus as well. And so it takes a little bit of getting used to, but the thumb shelf itself and the placement there, I think, gives a lot of room for, like you said, different hand sizes, different users to be able to manipulate that grip and use that really well. So I do like that feature.
When you look at that grip, and I've noticed this on a hunt, so I'll share some experience there. But when we look at how we design that grip, we basically said we want the perfect grip to actuate the trigger. And so that was the driving focus. So if you look at how your hand position sits, and how far your thumb comes in and how it rests, how it breaks over, and essentially we designed that grip so your hand goes on it and it fits one way, and then the intention was always to have that trigger adjustment move forward and back for your hand size rather than choke up or down to make that fit.
Yeah.
But in doing that, the circumference of the grip's huge. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know that a lot of people think about a precision rifle with that difference between that big circumference and then you go way back to the old sporting rifles. That circumference was a big thing because they'd walk around with a hand on the forend and a hand around the wrist, and they wanted really good control, and they wanted to be able to handle it and manage it and throw the gun up and shoot it offhand and all that. And as we moved into this precision shooting space, that's not a mode that we do.
Yeah.
And so if a anecdotal story on that point, when we introduced the Nexus, the intention was to always have like your 7 and your 6.5 PRCs and all that, and then to do a 375 Ruger. So you go to Africa, you could just swap your gun out, shoot a couple big game animals, dangerous stuff, then put the barrel back and go on your merry way. I did that on a hunt, and so I hunted, did the swap and then hunted Cape Buffalo in Tanzania. And the grip was so thick and unwieldy, right? So awkward in the style of shooting, up on sticks, offhand. it was so different in handling because I'd never used the gun in that sense. Usually it's set it up, get down, shoot, done. Mm-hmm. That I said, we are not going to make a 375 Ruger barrel because this is the stock and the design and the way it handles is not conducive to success in that.
Yeah.
So interesting grip decision. It's like you focus on one thing.
Yeah. And you optimize for that, and sometimes it excludes.
Have you got to shoot the Nexus like a Magnus Nexus comparable in recoil?
I haven't shot them like that in that scenario side by side to see how they feel.
Yeah, I do tons of shooting with the 7 PRC 7 LRM. Mm-hmm. So that's like my jam. It's like in that space. Shoot everywhere. The Nexus has less recoil than the Magnus. And you build one out comparable weight, still has less recoil. Now, I say less recoil. It still feels like it has less recoil. Mm-hmm. And I always, sometimes you stumble onto something cool. Okay, well, why does that happen this way? Like or in my case, I make a really stupid mistake, and it's like, well, why did that happen, right? So you try to understand the why behind it, and the only thing, and you need to test this someday when we don't have a bunch of shit to do. The only thing I can think of is that the thumb shelf is so wide and flat that you're absorbing recoil in your hand. Right? And taking, say, like a 5 or 10% edge off because the felt recoil of the gun on your face and your shoulder is less than you would experience out of a Magnus.
Interesting.
But we know this is a thing that can happen, right? Because we used to do this really cool comparison where we built a gun with a Macmillan A3. That's like the classic, reference standard for long range hunting. Like everybody's copied that stock. AG Composites copied that stock. Commanders copied that stock. The Macmillan next generation guns have copied that stock. So that's been the long range reference standard. When you think long range gun, you see a silhouette of that stock. Mm-hmm. And then we had that LR 1000 stock, which was almost styled a little bit more like a sporter.
Yeah.
And I remember, and then obviously we did the Magnus Gen 1 similar scenario, but it used the same design geometries, the negative comb, the grips, etc. When you would shoot the comparable weight in one gun versus the other. In fact, we had one scenario where a guy said, I want 338 Lapua, and we built it, same barrel contour, same action, everything. Just one used that LR 1000 stock and one used that A3. So this is the one that stuck in my mind, and we literally shot those things side by side. In the A3, like I shot it once, wouldn't shoot it again. Mm-hmm. In the LR 1000, it's like, ooh, that's pretty stiff. I can do it a couple more times. Not my preference in caliber, but manageable. And then why is it so much less than the A3? Well, negative comb geometries, a bunch of things play into that. But kind of the same things happened here with that Nexus stock. Is like it's less recoil, and right. Comb and position and stuff's very similar to that original LR 1000. So my gut tells me the only thing is that grip's so wide and flat. And then you have to say, well, why doesn't everybody copy that? And why. Because it makes that section in between, just what's quarter, 3/8 of an inch thick.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can make that with traditional molding methods.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Well, speaking of molding, we did add
molding difficulties.
Yeah, added leather to these stocks, which beautiful and feels great. When I was working mainly in the manufacturing side, every time the stock came up, I would make a play for getting rid of the leather just because it's difficult to mold those geometries in. But it looks very nice and it works.
What's the size of the radius in the bottom of that step down?
The radiuses, we're shooting for 70 thou radiuses and everything, which is pretty tight. And it's difficult to get the carbon fiber to mold into there. And when we first made that mold and first started working with it, similar to the other stuff, but the Nexus stock has a lot more, there's a lot more lines and facets in that stock and sharp corners.
But that's been a hallmark since we did our Climber Magnus.
Yeah.
Like we did some edge stuff.
Absolutely.
But this is edge to the extreme.
Yeah, next level. And with the addition of that leather and getting those pockets to form correctly, we struggled with that.
When you go back and look at the industry now and you look at the carbon fiber stocks that are out there, and you see one of these stocks where everything's round, there's half-inch radiuses on everything, right? And it just looks like this fuzzy marshmallow bubble, right?
Yeah.
What is your opinion of that stock?
I don't like them. To me, it just feels like it's mailed in, and I mean, it certainly is easy to make.
It's a high yield, low cost manufacturing process. That's what I see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No spirit or soul either.
Yeah, and I joke trying to get rid of the leather, but I do appreciate the fact that in our rifles we build in as much functionality as we can understand and incorporate, but we also put a lot of effort into the aesthetics and making a product that looks really nice as well.
Well, here's the benefit of having the boss be the owner and basically having no filter on what we need to do. Like, what's the goal here? Is the goal to make money?
We need to do that to support the goal.
Yeah. I mean, what's the goal?
Yeah, the goal is to make kick-ass stuff.
Yeah.
Make it really nice.
Yeah, and I know it frustrates the hell out of you guys sometimes when I say, no, it has to be this.
Yeah.
And it is hard.
Yeah.
Because there's so many easier ways to do things.
But it does.
They would actually make money.
Yeah. 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 It does yield very cool products, very functional products.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. You look at the Nexus. So when we started making the Nexus, that was that Gen 1 manufacturing process.
Yes.
Right? So we had those silicone bladders. We would make 2 shells, get super high pressures. You could make hard edges and stuff like that. And then we would bond those 2 shells together with a special foam, structural foam, etc. And then machine inlet all the space. And when we did COVID, one of the lasting effects was we lost the supply of that material and couldn't replace it. It's crazy to think in this day, first of all, that we would pick a single source material that our whole entire operation depends on, but that somehow there wouldn't be a suitable replacement.
Right.
So when we found out that was the end, we had about 9 months or 6 months.
It was 6 months.
6 months. We had 6 months of material left.
Yeah.
And you guys had to come up with a new stock process.
Yeah.
And then so we had this super hard to make, almost impossible edgewise product. And the reason why we could make it is because we had this specialized silicone bladder system that you could get 400 or 500 psi on.
Yeah.
Like just absolutely nuts. And then we had to switch to this new process. And in that switch, I think our Nexus yields went down. My gut tells me somewhere around 30% scrap.
Yeah.
After the initial period, and we got it better, right?
Yeah.
Like it was probably 70% scrap for a while, but
Yeah.
so we get it down to this 30% scrap, and we had that for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we brought Zach in.
Right.
And we've got a stock supervisor in there who has just absolutely crushed that. I mean, we're running 3-4%.
Yeah. Yep. Just
Unreal
talked to him
numbers.
today, and
Unreal numbers.
yeah, the scrap rates are incredible in there. And we, in addition to that, we were running like a 20-30% scrap rate, and we needed product to go through. And we looked at it and we were like, you know what? Some of these are still not, they're creating too much work to get through the paint department. They're great stocks, but there was just too many cosmetic blems in them.
Yeah.
And so we raised the bar a little bit and increased that scrap rate even more. And then we still had to go through the process of, getting that scrap rate down to where it's at now.
Yeah, our stock team right now, I don't think the company recognizes, how steadily awesome they are.
Yeah.
We just don't talk them about it enough because it's just when things are working, they don't get a lot of attention. And that team really actually is crushing performance right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we kind of went out on a big limb on a new process that we really wanted to incorporate. There was a lot of improvements that we made there and reasons why this process was better anyway.
Yeah.
But when we got into it, there was a month or so there where we were like, we might have made a mistake. Like, we're not getting the yield we need out of this.
The thought wasn't we might have made a mistake. The thought was, oh shit, we don't have a backup. We might be screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
Cost wise, I think we're very similar. We have to make that stiffener product. We're not using a significant increase in material, I don't think. So I'll bet cost is very comparable.
It's probably really similar.
It's really similar. Layup time, assembly time, I think we've cut out that middle processing step. My gut tells me that we're potentially even Stevens, overall, maybe just a little less time, because you have to make the stiffener separate. So
you do have to do that, but we've pulled out a fair amount
the processing
of work
time
there.
after it comes out of the mold is way less.
Yeah.
So here's where the real benefit is. I think I saw the numbers. I can't remember if this is Climber or Magnus, but we were 8 ounces lighter when we were done.
Yeah.
I think that's Climber specs.
Yeah.
So we took our stock process, we changed it, and now the stock is 8 ounces lighter.
Yeah.
Now, when we go do all the breaks, right? We've got our testing protocol, and we break it in all these axes, right? And then we also measure stiffness. So not only was it 8 ounces lighter, but it was also stiffer, and it withstood impacts better, and it had more strength before break, which we already had a better stock than almost everything we've ever tested.
Yeah.
So now it's got to crush. Have we done comparison numbers between that and industry?
I think we did a long time ago. I don't recall those numbers. That was
And the reason why is because you basically, as engineers, right, if you can get a contained member, right, and essentially I-beam, right, so you're trying to make these stiffening members. We actually embed the stiffening member in the stock and co-mold everything together.
Yeah.
And so if you look at a pull test, and a pull test, basically you cut a little circle, you glue a stud on, and then you put an instrument on there, and you just pull it until it breaks. And then you can see, does it separate the shell from the fill, right? Or what's the pounds of force required to actually break it? And you go do a pull test on that versus one of these older processes. So like McMillan invented the rifle stock, or maybe it was Brown, I can't remember, but McMillan made it big. So back in the 70s, you're doing these layups, and then they would fill it with a syntactic dough, basically, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the last time I looked at their process, they were doing it very similar. I think when Bob bought them, or maybe right before, they started doing some improvements, let's say, right?
Yeah.
But when you do the shell, and then you go put a bladder in it, cure it, and then you bring your syntactic, your foam, afterwards. Why don't you share with the readers a little bit about the problems with getting those changed to interlink?
Yeah. So, when you've got those products, you've got a product that's been previously cured, and surface energy when you're trying to create a good bond between your carbon fiber shell and your fill material.
So surface energy, think about these hydrocarbons, right?
Yeah.
And in an uncured one, you have all these unlinked open chains, right? And so you can bring two materials together, and they'll cross-link.
Yeah, on a molecular level.
And cure together.
They're combined.
But when you cure this one, and now it's done, and the energy's gone, now you don't have all those links. So it's like closed.
And you've got a bladder that you've put in there, and you put a release agent on your bladder so you can pull the thing back out, and then you have to bond to that surface. And so then you have to also remove your release agent, because of that certainly wouldn't help the bond. So
if you go back and look at our first process, right, we made the shells in two parts. So left shell, right shell. And we actually had that peel ply layer that we would put in there.
Yeah.
So when it was time to put them together and then do the fill, right, you'd inject that foam, and it would fill up, and it would bond. You'd actually have to peel that peel ply layer off to expose a high energy surface that actually had links available to cross-link.
Yeah.
So the big challenge with a bladder molded product that has fill in afterwards, when you go do the pull test, like they'll pull off in a couple 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Or less.
Yeah, and pulling and peeling is even worse. That those bonds there do really poorly in a peel test.
Yeah.
And so that's where pulling, you're putting those forces straight apart. But a peel test, you get an edge started and then just go.
Yeah.
And so we've developed some tests to check that peel strength and make sure that we're
so
doing
if I remember some numbers, like a post-packed stock process, something like 200 foot-pounds. Am I about right there?
I think so, yeah.
And then you go look at ours right now. Like, if I remember right, our Gen 1 was like 800 pounds. And if I remember right, this one's like in that 12 to 1,400 pounds.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Am I off?
Well, yeah, and basically what it comes down to is we weren't breaking on that bond line anymore.
No,
it was
we're
just
pulling the material
strength of
apart.
Material. So it was just
Underneath.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in order to increase that strength there, it was just making the material itself stronger. The bond,
which is probably just a trade-off with our hollow beads and epoxy
weight versus
chopped fiber mix.
Fiber. Yeah.
So you just take a shell like that, right? So now you think when you bend it, right, to break it, you're not going to get the separation between the shell and that support material, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the key reason why that pull test is so important. And then it's probably why they're so much stronger, because you put 3 or 4 layers of carbon down. It doesn't matter who does it. It's like they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think it really comes down to that core and that bond.
Yeah.
Now, the cool thing about our process is we actually have that stiffening layer, and then it's got your shell on the outside, but then we technically have a shell on the inside, so it's completely encapsulated. Yeah. So you think about the strength that provides, it's huge. We actually patented that because it was so unique in the space and because the performance parameters were so much greater.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and there's a lot, you go to the stocks, there's a lot of advantages just doing it the way everybody else does, right? Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier. You don't have those challenges. And then if you don't have an engineering team and the budget to be able to put it into developing new, then it's always easier just to default to the easier, normal way. Okay, sorry, I keep sidebarring. Keep going. Where we got to? We got to leather insets and those angles and steps. Pain in the butt.
Pain in the butt. They look nice. Feel great.
Yeah. Actually, dude, after using the leather in the field, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, it's warm. So it's warm to the touch. Like, it doesn't, like when you sweat and you touch it, it doesn't make it slippier. Like, it'll absorb that moisture a little bit. Mm-hmm. Looks better. Patina's nice. I actually think it's the only way to go. When we started pushing the leather, we saw the guys copycat a few real easy ways to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? You got like this cheesy shell cheek piece, and you just bond leather to it, and then you trim around it. It's not the same thing, is it? No. We have a backer. You have this leather. You have to slice it thin enough that you can wrap it and then sew it. So now it's sewn to that backer and it's trapped in there, and then it's bonded to the material.
Yeah.
To the stock. Way bigger difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell when you look at it from a picture. You can't, but when you actually get close to it. Yeah, the Europeans do a great job of the leather. Mm-hmm. Actually, really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, where else were we on the Nexus? I think integral base was a big push that we made there. Mm-hmm. Just trying to eliminate. Basically, the more things you can eliminate between the scope and the barrel, the better. Yeah. And since we introduced this barrel joint, we got rid of at least the scope action joint.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's pretty common.
Yeah. Gosh, I think that covers most of where we ended up on that first generation Nexus.
I really like that gun, man.
Yeah.
So when we went to Gen 2, we actually pulled 8 ounces out of the weight, right? Mm-hmm. So Gen 2 automatically has that lighter stock process, pulled 8 ounces out. And we haven't touched anything else on the stock.
Yeah.
When we built the index, I always like taking the opportunity to just throw a couple little extra projects on a project to get a little bit more. So the index was supposed to be just a chassis project.
Right.
So here's the NXT action, barreled action, trigger, magazine box, ready to go. All you need to do is make a real simple chassis for it. Should be easy. Should take a couple months, right?
Yeah. Simple.
And so, I threw that project out there, and it just got more and more complex. One of the requirements on that was I wanted the hinge to be completely contained within the chassis. And I provided like the design concept and direction for like how we were going to accomplish that. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of details we had to go through to make that fit and to get it to look right. I would guess just that piece alone between industrial, mods, mechanical engineering, testing, prototyping, that has to have 1,500 hours in it, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
All of 1,500.
Absolutely.
So just that one little piece, and the only reason was because it needed to be contained, which means you need to invent and, build something that hadn't been done before. Now, if we just wanted a hinge that had the little pin sticking out on the side and you fold it up, it's like that would have taken nothing.
Yeah.
Right? You can pull some inspiration from something that exists, and there's 100 examples of that. You could have went forward.
Yeah.
When we started the project, the goal was hunting weight, and as we got closer into that project, we realized we make this out of aluminum. This is going to be our precision chassis, not our lightweight chassis.
Right.
So I think there was a product shift right in the middle from kind of like hunting weight chassis into like precision rifle chassis. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a pain in the butt to make a shift in the middle, but I actually like where we ended up. Mm-hmm. Like it is. So basically, if you look at our standard lineup, our legacy lineup, you got the Climber mountain rifle, Magnus all around long range, and then Verdict, which is our ELR competition rig. And then you go look at the new next generation, right? You've got the Nexus, which is our all around long range, and up at the top end, you've got this Index, which kind of takes a similar place as the Verdict, but not so much competition, not so much ELR as just a precision rifle rig.
Right.
And it's very, very configurable. You can throw forward mount rails on it. That thing can fold up. You can go short barrels. Like I think Derek built a 16-inch barrel, 300 PRC last year, run around hunting with it. They were shooting elk at 1,300 yards. I mean, that was a cool rig.
Yeah.
But it's got the mass and weight to actually run big cartridges and do big distances with.
Yeah.
But you take that same thing, you flip it around and do like a 6 Creedmoor, right? Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden that becomes a whole different animal, right? Throw a thermal, forward clip-on thermal on there. You've got this really interesting varmint, rig. So I think it's a really configurable for the mission rifle system, which is, I'm pretty happy with it. It's very unique. Just don't think because it looks light, it is light. It's probably a pound heavier than the Nexus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just a little over a pound.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. We're a little heavier than where we wanted to be on that product.
Yeah.
And it's always easy to add weight back into something, but once the product's set, you can't pull weight back out.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Right.
So we've got this Index, and it weighs a little more than we want. That's where we started looking at, well, can we remove any weight from the action? And really, there's only one place, and that's the bolt body. Yeah. We had this full diameter bolt body, and it was steel. And so the idea was, let's just flip that over and make that aluminum, shroud steel. And so we had to change the way the shroud and the bolt handle interface. We changed a few other things. And then while we were at it, the Nexus has a 69 degrees, I think. It had to be 69, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So 69 degree bolt throw. And it was pretty stiff compared to the GLR. GLR is a beautiful, absolutely smooth, like minimalist, bolt throw. So we go to the NXT, and it's like, it's great, puts all the energy in there, fast, really, really fast ignition. But we had all these trade-offs in bolt lift. And so what we wanted to do was reduce the bolt lift. We set a goal, 30% lighter. Mm-hmm. And I think if I remember right, we achieved 40% reduction in bolt lift, and still delivering all the energy, impulse, momentum numbers that we're looking for on the firing pin. Mm-hmm. So I think that in itself was magnificent. And you start digging into why, And we actually built this fixture. Were you in part of that? You were in the manufacturing side then, so you didn't see this.
Yeah.
But we had this fixture with a torque wrench on the bolt. And so we were literally measuring, here's the torque. So it was tits on numbers. And then we started looking at what are the different parts of lifting the bolt, what are the different pieces that contribute to that force, whether it's a friction force or it's a spring force or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just started breaking that apart and analyzing it. And we put a roller on the caulking cam. Now, we've seen this before. I think the first time I saw it was on a Browning X-Bolt way back. I bought an X-Bolt and a 25/6 like when I was in college. So this is probably, this is a long time ago. Not even going to do that math.
Probably before my time.
So I think that's shown up before, right? And probably seen that in a few actions, post. But so that was clearly something that needed to happen. And we were twofold in our motivation there. We had the material issue of the caulking ramp was aluminum.
Yep.
And there was another company that did an aluminum bolt.
It chews up fast.
Really fast. And I'm sure that there was problems there. And so we just wanted to make sure we avoided that.
Yeah.
And so I think that roller really helped. Now, I always wanted a tapered roller so that the speed of that roller just rolled up. I couldn't get Josh to pull that one off. He said it was too much. But someday we're going to go back and the Gen 4 or Gen 5 of that thing's going to actually have a tapered roller so that the radius is perfect.
Yeah.
But so that roller rolling up will kind of like it. What we've noticed is it kind of burnishes in a space. You kind of wear through that ano layer, and then it seems like it just sits there and runs forever.
Yeah.
So I think we won on preserving the aluminum and then also on reducing that friction element. But there's this other one that we found that was so interesting. It was 4 pounds, which I can't remember that in a percentage, but my gut feel is like this is a 10 to 15% bolt lift issue. And that is when you lift the bolt, right, you're kind of jamming all those parts together, and then you're sliding the caulking piece back. But while you're sliding the caulking piece back, you're also jamming the parts together.
Right.
And so what we found is if we put a roller down there at the bottom on the caulking piece, so that when you're lifting and that caulking piece is coming back, that we get rid of the sliding friction part, and now that roller lets it come back. That was a huge factor in reducing the bolt lift. It was big. You'll have to look that up and see if the magnitude of order is right, but I think it was 10 to 15% was just that one change.
Okay.
And then we played some games with the caulking helix.
Yeah.
So you think about that caulking cam, you only have so many degrees of rotation to lift the bolt, and you have to bring that caulking piece back, right? Obviously, you know this.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out a way to balance the energy, and it's an interesting trade-off because you don't want to just go right to the energy, right? You don't want to go right to the energy because you want it to start moving and then get harder and harder and harder, so it changes the perception of the lift. So you got to be really, really sneaky about the way you make that shape. And then the other one that we run into problems is you want it to engage the cam almost immediately when you start lifting the bolt. But if you do that, now technically the firing pin's hitting that cam at the bottom of its stroke.
Which
so
you do not want that.
You got to get that just right.
Yeah.
And I've got some ideas for how to make that even better in the next generation, by the way.
Good.
So I think those were the three main elements that helped us reduce that. There's a couple little parts inside and a few changes that made that also work, but it's huge, man. A 60% reduction in bolt lift's huge.
Yeah.
And then what did we save on the aluminum? Was that 3 or 4 ounces?
I think it was 3 ounces there.
I think it was 3 and change.
Yeah.
So it's like now you start looking at 8 ounces out of the stock, 3 ounces out of the bolt. I think we saved an ounce or two somewhere else. Like we were getting really, really close to a pound lighter.
Yeah.
On the Gen 2 Nexus.
Yeah.
So I think the bolt swap was probably the biggest one, and then the associated components that allowed us to reduce that bolt lift 40%. I think that was huge. So we got the weight savings and the bolt lift savings, and we're literally in that final stretch. All that's done. Chassis looking pretty good. You guys have solved a lot of the manufacturing problems. we've got our side panels bonded on. I mean, everything's looking pretty good. And I kind of decided that we needed that adjustable trigger shoe.
Yeah.
If we're going to do this, we just got to get that adjustable trigger shoe. And so I opened up a whole new can of worms, which was we need to make our own trigger.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it's not a small project.
No, it is not.
Why don't you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the trigger and part of that too was helping eliminate the complexity and the difficulty with the 3-position safety. Where we started incorporating that in. We wanted the feature for the bolt to lock.
The best example we had of that, of simplicity, robustness, and function, was the Tika.
Yeah.
There's the design inspiration for anybody that wants to know.
Yeah, so great trigger there. But diving into that trigger, I mean, there's so many different ways that problem's been solved, but you're trying to get that trigger to disengage, the fire control mechanism with very minimal force. So like we were shooting to be able to adjust it less than 2 pounds, which is a light trigger. And getting the surfaces and the geometries correct to achieve that repetitively, we discovered was quite the challenge. And we had to dig back into that design several times and look and manipulate the geometries and make sure we understood exactly what was going on there.
Well, if you back up the story, it's like we were kind of on track to launch.
Yeah, we were.
And you basically stepped up and said, "Hey, look, I'm not certain that we have this nailed."
Yeah.
And we went and cracked the covers open and looked at it, and we decided that we were relying too much on the trigger pull weight spring to keep everything functioning, and that the trigger was extremely sensitive to the firing pin spring weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a couple things there where it's like, well, the design was good, but it didn't understand all of the interactions, and it didn't maximize the efficiency and the safety of each one of those interactions.
Yeah.
And so we basically took a finished product that had, it had all of 1,000 hours into it.
Yeah.
And we said, go back to first principles. Let's redo this. Let's understand how this interface and this interaction works. And it wasn't just the forces, it was also materials.
It was.
Materials ended up playing a huge part of this. Yeah. Like absolutely huge. It was the difference between works and didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had the geometry there where, like I said, we were relying on that spring weight to keep the trigger engaged, and without the spring weight, the trigger would disengage. And we adjusted the geometry so that without any spring weight, the trigger still holds the firing pin and holds its place there. And so that was a big change in understanding that. And then that's kind of where we discovered the material problem, is then we had these friction components where we were relying on some angles to overcome the friction problem.
Yeah, essentially the angle was set so that the firing pin's force and the force that the caulking piece was exerting on the system was actually helping to contribute to breaking the shot.
Right.
And that's what we didn't like. And so we had to redo that geometry so that force actually tipped to the safe side.
Yep.
And then we had to come up with other methods so that we could overcome that friction. Now, we made a really great trigger at 4 pounds.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like all these guys that just go rebuild a Tika, right? Because it's a 4-pound trigger.
Yeah.
All these guys that just go rebuild a Tika and start changing the spring weights and stuff, I promise you they would not pass our drop tests.
Yeah.
No way. No way would they be safe.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was a very difficult thing. And we did, we've talked about this in a couple previous podcasts of our drop testing and the things that we do to ensure safety, and it is over the top.
What's the SAMI spec requirement?
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot, but
I think it's like 4 foot with safety on.
Yeah.
1 foot or 18 inches with the safety off.
Right. Yeah. Right in that neighborhood there.
And 6 axis. So it's a 1 or 18-inch drop, 6-axis, safety off, can't fire.
Right.
And it's a hard rubber pad, right? We must have like an 1.25 inch, 1.5 hard rubber pad.
Yeah.
It's not rubber squishy, it's rubber hard. It's
Yeah.
like this wood hard.
Right.
And then 4 feet with the safety on, 6-axis.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, the trigger that we were using from another brand, like if I remember right, it barely passed the requirements.
Yeah.
And we actually started testing safety off at 4 feet and
Correct.
could pass that.
Yeah.
And so I think the outcome of our study and our efforts actually made one of the safest triggers that we've ever tested. I don't think we've tested one that performs better.
Yeah. Yeah. But as we adjusted those geometries to ensure that safety, that's where we ran into
Can't get the way to
yeah,
pull.
we were under 2 pounds with our original design, but when we shifted that, we were too high, and so we were scratching our heads and working through that, and discovered that we had the surface finish on those components was critical in reducing that friction element.
Surface finish, materials.
Yeah, being able to get the correct surface finish was hinged on having the right material that we could polish and get right. We certainly didn't want to use any lubricant in this scenario to gain that element there that we needed. And so we went back through, we redid the design, felt like we were good, and then the pull weight of the trigger would increase over time as the materials
changed.
Yeah,
changed. Surface finish changed.
Yeah,
and that's a really good case of, okay, it looked great, and then you put 10,000 cycles on it and you see it changes.
Yeah.
And the only way we're able to really have a feel for that, we're not sitting there pulling it with a $20 trigger tester, right? We've got a Dvorak trigger scan, so you see the force movement of that trigger, and you can see it over time, and you can see the change and really monitor it.
Yeah.
With taking the human aspect out of it.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty key. I actually think really, really sophisticated testing setups can lead you to much better conclusions and better designs. I dream about tools. You know this.
That is true.
Like that next tool for me is that barrel laser.
Yeah.
I think there's this whole world of cool shit that we can learn by having that next level of testing capability. So
Absolutely.
Well, I really like how the trigger turned out. We built that feature in so that it's got a baked in 1.5 pound floor, right? Mm-hmm. So you can pull it down to 1.5. I actually think that's a little light for a hunting trigger. 1 3/4 is really nice. 2's a little strong. 2 1/4 is too high for me.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. But we baked in that floor, so we've got a feature in there that prevents somebody from making a mistake. And obviously we've prevented the over travel the other direction. So it's a user adjustable way to pull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was one of the additional learnings that we put into there, was not allowing that to be adjusted so far down that it again puts it in an unsafe state. And so that was a pretty cool little feature that we put in there to that stop.
So we got user adjustable way to pull, 1.5 to about 2.5, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got this is a vertical sear trigger, which is important for us in the way that we've set this up.
Yep.
We got on safe, we got a locking bolt, so it keeps the bolt closed, locked. And then we built a adjustable shoe position. So from nominal, it moves forward and back 1/4 inch. So 1/4 forward, 1/4 back.
Yeah.
So it's huge. So now you get in behind that grip, you adjust that shoe exactly where you want it. You get this perfect stress-free, no disturbance trigger actuation. It's very nice.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I'm very happy with that project. I mean, as big a pain in the ass it was and is, right? I mean, we assemble those and build them and make sure they don't suck, and it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we've had good success with
But
them.
now we get the benefit of those features that we couldn't get before.
Yeah.
Cool. Crap, did we cover anything else? So that came from the index, and so like my secret little machination was I got all of those changes done for the index, and you got this panic to get this project done and this push, and everybody's got buy-in. And so now I had all these changes that we could adapt in line straight into the Nexus.
Yep.
And so that all those changes to the action for the index took the NXT action and made it the NX2, the
Right.
Gen 2 of that.
Yeah.
And so now the NX2 action, except for the fact we had to change the bedding surfaces, was a drop-in into the Nexus.
Yeah.
So change the bedding block, and now we're ready to rock and roll. I think that means that it's not back compatible.
Right.
So a Gen 1 bedding block makes that stock unique to the Gen 1 action.
Right.
So now we've got basically a brand new Nexus. It's not quite a pound, but it's almost a pound lighter. It's got 40+% less bolt lift. It's got a locking bolt safety. It's got adjustable trigger position. I think it's a heck of a set of upgrades.
Yeah. It is a really nice rifle, and they shoot really well. We've addressed some of the manufacturing and difficulties in making a Remington 700 shoot well, and that gun is really nice.
Yeah. I actually, when you think about the perfect system, which we're always chasing, right? I think our only trade-off here is the barrel clamp joint, right? So if the barrel clamp joint's not right, it adds a level of complexity where you have to have the torques right, you have to have it installed right. If you don't do that, then you've installed basically this joint between the scope and the barrel.
Yeah.
And so there's just that extra little bit of effort that needs to be done to make sure that that's maintained well. But other than that, I think we've actually really, really crushed the performance side.
Yeah.
They've always shot better than our legacy guns. I don't know why that is. I think I really think it comes to the vertical sear and the way we've set up that bolt to be square.
Yeah.
And not have that extra little effort in there. And then if you look at the way the barrel extension contains all the pressure, right? Now you have a little bit different reaction. In a regular action, that whole thing stretches.
Yeah.
And then you get this difference in geometries, and you get these harmonics that are established in the barrel, and you get these different POIs. With this thing, I think because of that barrel extension, and it's this really exotic, really high strength material, it just doesn't move the same. And I think we are able to maintain that position better and reduce that.
Yeah.
But it's complexity. So, there's always
Trade-offs.
adds things. But
Yeah.
anyways, I'm pretty happy with it. I haven't done a lot of switch barrel stuff, but I have converted a rifle before.
Mm-hmm.
I think the impression is that it's a switch barrel, and I keep having my sales guys, hey, I need a case with an extra barrel in it so I can drag it around, right? It's like the intention isn't necessarily to be a switch barrel, because you pull that barrel out and put it back in. Now you've lost your zero, right?
Yeah.
You have to re-zero the scope. It's not like a blazer where the scope's attached to the barrel, so if you take it off and put it back on, you've got a reasonable expectation of continued performance. So I think it's more of a user service barrel or a user configurable rifle. So if you want to move from a 300 PRC to a 65 PRC, you can do it. If you wear out a barrel and need to replace it, you can do it.
Yeah.
It is pretty cool that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just got back from Spain a couple weeks ago, and that was my rifle I took, was the Nexus. If I have to go kill stuff and you don't have something else for me to launch and to test, I'm defaulting to the Nexus.
Yeah.
Your sight picture is disturbed less. You get to see and follow through the shots better. You have less felt recoil, right? It's so configurable in mounting systems, whether it's a tripod. I had to shoot one Ibex at 680 yards ish, about 30 degrees uphill, sitting in a bad spot, and it sucked. It's like I should have picked a different spot. Tripod's almost fully extended all the way out, trying to freaking lean back and point up at that thing. Mm-hmm. And I could just clamp on where I needed to so that it would fit and work.
Yeah.
It's like it was pretty sweet.
Yeah. But so what were the shots you took on your Spain trip?
So I shot Ibex in the southeast, and there was the scenario. I shot chamois that was about 450, 475, and 30 knot winds, crazy wind. And and my shooting was this, as you would expect in that kind of scenario. It was one of those bad mornings where there's no mirage, and we were shooting through like this little notch, and it's pretty calm there, and it's pretty calm here, but it was freaking cooking.
Yeah.
And I sent one, and we didn't see anything, had no idea. And I just did the quick analysis because he takes 2 steps, he's in thick stuff, and he's gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, it has to be wind. We'd seen big wind earlier, right? And I'd actually hiked down there with my wind meter to kind of check in, kind of made a decision what the wind was. And then as soon as I laid down, it was calm and nothing was over there. I'm like, then I changed my mind and I shot something different for wind. So I'm just like, it has to be wind. It has to push off, go back to that original assessment. So I made that correction and tagged him, but that was dumb. It was still less wind than what it was.
Huh.
But those things are so small. It's only like this big, you know? So it's like,
yeah,
a little bit of wind. 2 minutes is the difference between double lung and hip shot, you know. That's only a 10 knot wind.
Yeah.
The other one was a mouflon. And that one was pretty much zero wind, like 350 yards ish, super chip shot.
Yeah.
Like no issue.
Yeah.
We were shooting a new bullet. I took the Sierra tipped Match Kings over.
Okay.
And in my scope, so back to being able to follow through with your sight picture and see what was going on, I shot that mouflon and just put it right through the ribs, heart, and I could see a stream of liquid just gush out of this guy on the entrance wound.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
No, it frickin' just poked a hole and liquidated him, and it just squirted everything right out that entrance hole. So
nice.
So, I mean, but I could see that through my scope as I shot, and it happened instantly. I seen that reaction. So it's like, okay, probably not going to need a follow-up on this one.
Yeah.
But, no, that's pretty cool. Now, I really, really like the shooting behavior of the Nexus. And I think the industry's really coming on to, you know, this concept of a negative comb and what that does to the reaction of the rifle. Basically, it moves your recoil pad up so that your reaction force is more in line with the barrel, which minimizes muzzle rise. And then that negative comb makes it so the gun pulls away from your face. It does 2 things. Number 1, it reduces felt recoil, right? You just don't feel it when it comes away.
Yeah.
But the second thing that it's doing, it's detaching you from the gun.
Yeah.
And we've worked really, really hard to do these grips where keep your thumb on the right side of a right-handed grip so that you kind of disconnect your hand from over-controlling the grip. So that what that means is you get a consistent release every time you shoot.
Yeah.
And I think that the negative comb, I know that the negative comb, when you shoot, it disconnects from your face.
Yeah.
So it removes one more part where your body has influence on the movement of the gun before the bullet exits.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot of those guys. Actually, has anybody not adopted that yet? Weatherby did. I wonder where that came from. Macmillan's adopted it. Ultimate did it. Did Axial and Manners pick it up yet? I can't remember.
I think they have on a couple.
Yeah.
And then there's that new one that's got that crazy extreme angle.
Ultimate one. I can't remember the name on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, clearly it's there, right? And we started talking about that, and then everybody picked up on, oh, this actually is different. But that was a feature that we incorporated into the first gun over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, because it was an engineering first principles solution to how do we bring the right design geometries into a rifle stock.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anything that has a better set of geometries than the Nexus for precision hunting application.
Yeah.
I think it's dang close to perfect. I don't know how we're going to make it better.
We'll figure it out.
Cool. Well, I think time's up. So I think we covered Gen 1 Nexus, a lot about Nexus, and then the improvements that came in Gen 2, which is essentially the NX2 action. The lighter bolt lift, the user adjustable trigger with adjustable trigger shoe, locking bolt, and absolute robust safety and function that we haven't been able to match anywhere yet.
Yeah.
So I like it. I think we've done a great job of really tuning that up and making it next level. I've already told you what I want in Gen 3. I think you tabled that for this year, but one of these times we're going to get that.
It'll
But
come soon.
lots of cool things to do yet in Gunworks rifle development, and we really appreciate our customers that have supported our ability to develop and bring new products to the market.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, and we're never perfect, but we're actually striving to be the best and to bring the best solutions to the problems that we see when they're in the field. And we're all hunters and shooters and users of these products, and so we're not designing in a vacuum. You know, we're not out there hiking. I can't think of anybody here that goes hiking. We go hunting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that the product design team's really focused on that, and appreciate you being patient with me in pushing all the time. But the Nexus Gen 2, I mean, that's a really good example of what happens when you push.
Yeah. Great product. It really is. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunworks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunworks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.